So Fynn is passionate about climate change. His ambition, as he shared it with me, is to prevent further damage that we humans cause to the planet, to reduce the impact of prior changes and restore the planet, and prepare for the impact of the changes that have been made so far. He was in the training. So recently there was the big UN conference on climate change that was held in Scotland, the COP26, and he was part of a youth summit that was trained there on how to train the youth of the world on why climate is such a priority. He's done an analysis using the change matrix that we're about to share with you. And without further ado, we're going to move into the program that Fynn and I have prepared. And now you should be able to see my screen, which has a blank. I just want to show you right before we really get into it, because many of you have never seen one of these before. This is the construct of a change matrix. It's, you think about what's the change or the decision that you want to make, and then you assess that. You think about it from 4 vantage points. The vantage points are really about why it's good to make the change, why it's bad to keep the status quo, and why it might not be so good to make the change, and why it might be good from your perspective to keep the status quo. And we're going to go through this in detail together. We're going to, if you have not yet received a copy of this template, you should have received it in the emails that you got before here. If you didn't, just get out a piece of paper, draw 4 boxes, and you'll be able to go along with us as we move. And I'll put a link for the template again in the email that you'll receive in a couple hours from now. So the very first thing we do with this process is ask ourselves, so what's the change or decision that we're thinking about? And with this, I'm going to ask, and I also wanted to show you, so you're going to see some nice slides, and what Fynn wrote is going to come up in very legible form. But this is what Fynn sent me after he actually completed the change matrix on the subject that we're going to talk about today. So I want you guys to, I just wanted you to see the proof that it's actually real. This young man actually did this work. But we'll move to make it so that you don't have to go like that. Fynn, first, before we talk about the specific change that you want young people and probably everybody to make, but you focused on people in your age cohort, would you share with us why you think this change is so important? And I know we prepared a couple of slides on that, so you just now you tell me when to click the button for the slides.
I think the first slide could go up now. So yeah, fast fashion. The reason I think this is a change that I personally thought I would do this analysis on is, well, I thought, well, this seems quite interesting. This seems useful, and I want to use it with climate. And I thought, what's a problem that's very relevant to me that I find in my community a lot of the time? And I came to the conclusion that it would be fast fashion. I see a lot of people at school with clothes, and then sometimes I never see that same pair of clothes again. And I just find that mind-boggling. And I looked up, as it says there, I looked up the supply chain, the impact of that, and I thought, oh, this is really big. This is a really big problem. And as it says there, 1.2 billion tons of CO2 per year. That's more than shipping and aviation combined. And I think stuff like you never see this type of thing hit the news. So I thought, oh, this is a very big problem, and that's why I thought to use the change matrix on it, because if for anything else, it would help me better my understanding of this problem.
So you all can see, right, what the problem is. The amount of CO2 that's produced per year, the amount of gas emissions that come through this industry are pretty significant. So if a young man like Fynn can do something to start to alter that, he decided that's what I'm going to do. And so now the specific change that you had thought about that will show up on your change matrix is related to this, yes?
Yeah. Shall I introduce people who haven't known about this? Mm-hmm. So here you have, this is just one version of it. You have things like the 7 R's, but this sustainability pyramid is quite a good one. So right at the top, this is the different levels. So right at the top, we have buy new. That's that's the one that's giving the 1.2 billion tons of CO2. So then as we go down, you could thrift things. So you have loads of thrifts and you have like secondhand shops. It's better than buying something new, but it's not the best you could have. It's not the best way of helping save carbon. So then we move down a level, and we have swap, and then another level we'd have borrow. I introduce these usually together because either borrowing things from other people, so like you have this is about school project, so let's say you had a project or a job and you needed to have a picture, a very good picture, but you were like, well, it's not really worth it for me to buy a whole new camera. You could borrow a camera, or if you had a wedding, people rarely are going to buy a whole suit and a whole dress. They're going to borrow or rent something. And then with swap, there's loads of swap shops, maybe not where we live, but in a lot of places, when I was driving through England in the holidays, there's quite a lot of swap shops, and they're really good for just taking things that you might not find value in and turning them into something that you do want. I know I've found quite a few good books from swap book things. And 2 steps down, the two that most people find when you think of a sustainability pyramid, they ignore those first 3, and they instantly think of making and repurposing things and how that can take a while, when it makes to them more sense to have a more quicker route. So making and repurposing things, I try and do as much as possible. So, and a lot of the time, just wearing what you have and using what you have currently is the best. As the pyramid says here, it's the best way of cutting it down. And a step that it doesn't have here, just because this is it's an older infographic. Now we also have another step, which would be, do you actually even need it? Do you even? It kind of goes with what you have. You'd be using the 7 R's. Rethink. Are you actually needing this, 11th pair of jeans? Or are you fine with the other 10? And can you just wear the other 10?
Very good. Very good. Thank you. Before we move to how you verbalize the specific change you looked at in your change matrix, there are several people on this call who come from the theory of constraints world. And those of you who are not, what Fynn's looking at is really how we individuals deal, what we can do as individuals. Those of you who are involved in the world of retail, and those of us who buy from stores, in order for us to have the selections that we're looking for, these companies have to produce way more than they'll sell. So an additional humongous contributor to all the CO2 and the emissions is the amount of surplus, the stuff that maybe I want it, but nobody else does. And now it hangs on the rack forever and it gets thrown away and it goes on sale and that whole thing. So those of you who are in TOC and working with companies that are in that whole supply chain to be able to really reduce it and help those companies only produce what's actually being bought, I think is also a potential positive impact, not only for the companies that you're working with, but also for the environment. So just a little plug to help you all think, those of you who are in the TOC world, to help you think about that too. It's larger than just the profitability and inventory turns of those companies that you're working with. Okay, Fynn, so the way that you now verbalize this on your change matrix, right? Before you all saw a blank one, now you're going to see what we're going to talk about each of these 4 quadrants as they get filled in. So Fynn, you can read that to us or people can read through it, but this is pretty much what you wrote. Right? So
yeah, I'll read. So young people make conscious consumer decisions, such as only buying new as a last resort, because some stuff you do just need to buy new.
Yeah. So now what I'm going to ask all of you is, if you were able to download the template that I provided you, type that in for yourself. And maybe, you don't need to say young people. You could say, I make conscious consumer decisions, such as only buying new as last resort. And as Fynn describes and as I help you understand what the quadrants are for, and Fynn describes what he put in there, I want to invite you to put in your own responses relative to you yourself making a lifestyle change like this. Okay. So the first place we're going to go, the first quadrant we're going to go is this one. It's represented by an alligator because it represents problems that we or those we care about have, that the way to solve those problems would be through this change. Okay? Problems that we have or that we're about to have that will be solved by the change. And this is how Fynn filled it in, and we'll ask him to bring us through his response, and I'll ask you guys, I'll give you a minute as soon as he's done to put in yours.
I think it'll be easiest if we take each point and I'll explain it in more detail. So a problem solved by the change, reducing unnecessary production, as Lisa's already said, shipping and landfill waste. So anyone here, as I've already seen, who has done anything to do with TOC would understand that the reducing of unnecessary production is a very important step within a company. And just within everyday people's lives. If you go to a shop, you can, and people you're always going to be annoyed if their place at the shop usually always has something and now it's sold out. And that's going to annoy people, isn't it? So you need reducing unnecessary production is in and of itself going to help businesses understand what consumers generally are looking for. And shipping and landfill waste reduction is going to be good, because when something's being shipped, that's going to get out, that creates a lot of carbon. As we've mentioned before, it's a huge industry, shipping, and it uses a lot of carbon and a lot of fossil fuels to power a lot of the ships. And stopping the landfill waste, well, no one really wants to have to drive by huge things full of landfill. and plastics and bin bags and stuff. It does not look nice, nor is it sanitary. And it starts, from what I've seen, it starts to leak carbon out into the atmosphere. I'm correct with that, aren't I?
Bad things, not necessarily carbon.
Not necessarily carbon, bad things like
Plastic.
And plastic and the things they put on, like plastic. And so another point of helping people realize that just the general mindset of the fact that they can do something about a lot of climate challenges, because a lot of people I've found dismiss them, but not because they don't think they're important. It's because they feel that they can't make a difference. So helping people make conscious consumer decisions is going to help here, because people will feel that they can make a difference. And after that, it's like a boulder rolling down a hill. It's just going to get better and better and better. So let's say you do this and you realize, oh, well, I can make different decisions. So you recycle more. And it just goes up and up in different changes. And just a final one here would be that there'd be cleaner air, which is naturally better for people. And usually people are happier in green spaces. Just generally, people are going to be happier in cleaner air, a cleaner place.
Thank you. So the whole thing revealed itself. I meant it to come up one at a time, but we're going to look at these one at a time, guys. So in here, we generally put, what are the problems that would be solved? And often I see people writing what would be better as a result. And often I see people writing in actually the problems that would be solved. When I listen to you, Fynn, everything in here tells me that the real underlying problem that you're trying to solve, that you want people to care about, what is going on? That you want people to care about is the planet is gonna, right? If we keep going the way we're going, we're gonna have no more planet, right? So yes, all the green spaces that we love. I mean, I think about these, the world according to the worst movies that we can watch, and that's not out of reach. So I hope that you all put something for yourselves. What problems that you care about would be solved by following Fynn's advice of making more conscious decisions about what we buy and when we buy it. The next place we're going to go is in the other set of reasons that making a change would be good. So this is why status quo would be bad. Status quo is bad when we have problems in the status quo. We need to fix them. But why also would it be good may have nothing to do with problems to be solved, but with things that would really look to us like benefits we never really thought about before that we might be able to get. So Fynn, I'm going to ask you, and it's represented by the pot of gold, because pot of gold is something that, you never think that it's going to drop on your lap, right? If we got the pot of gold, we'd be able to get a ton of benefits, and maybe we'd also be able to solve some problems. So Fynn, walk us through what you wrote under this pot of gold quadrant.
So in that quadrant, I wrote about the young people feel that they are helping. So like, as I said before, that positive effect is really important, and it's something that I've felt before when I've done something small and how I've understood how that helps. That's a really important thing for helping us to be better for the climate, and young people to feel that they are adding pressure to global brands to take action to reduce fast fashion and consumerism. because a lot of big brands base the way they make their money off of this concept of people continuously getting different shoes and clothes and different things.
Well, thank you. And as I think about this aspect too, something that you mentioned earlier is something that I imagine, at least for me, I think about looking around and seeing many more green spaces. Whether or not those green spaces are solving a problem, that's just, more beauty in the world. and something else that you and I talked about a little bit, which may or may not be the case for some young people, but it could very well be that buying less, right? If I only buy if I go to the very bottom level and I'm only buying when it's absolutely necessary, how much more money they can have in their pockets because they're not spending it on stuff that they don't need. And that could be a huge benefit, even for many of us, right? So the two areas of making a decision about making a change that we should think about when we're thinking about making a change that's meaningful to us is, what problems would the change solve? And what additional benefits would the change bring? Ideally, a change is helping us do both, solving problems and gaining more benefits. And again, And now we're going to move to the categories of things that make us, even when a change might be good for us, why we might be not so inclined to do it. And I'm going to start on the top right. And this top right quadrant is its little icon is the person in crutches. And it represents, let's think that maybe that pot of gold is up on top of a mountain somewhere and I need to climb that mountain in order to get to it. Right? So the only way my problems will be solved and my benefits will be gained is if I climb to the top of this mountain. But lo and behold, that path is filled with rocks and whatever else, and I'll never be able to make it up there. Maybe I don't have the stamina. I'm not in great condition. Maybe I fall down off the mountain and break my leg. So I never get to the change. So this quadrant is asking us, what are those risks and obstacles that would actually block us from getting to the change at all?
So here I've put about how if their friends make fun or are nasty about them buying secondhand, that can be a big problem. So not want to close the chat. There we are.
And we can all imagine scenarios like that, right? You're a young person, your friends start making fun of you, forget about continuing with the change.
Yeah, a lot of people, there would be a high chance of them seeing something that's secondhand or isn't bought brand new. And luckily, I haven't had that happen to me, but I have heard stories from other people, and it can be really embarrassing, and it can feel a bit spiteful, and it can make people really sad, and it would make a lot of people not want to continue with a change because of it. And another thing that I've discovered being in academy now and being able to go about and wanting to buy locally, so local produce and local things, so local produce, clothes from different people, trying to swap things, Facebook Marketplace a lot of the time. It's usually more expensive if I'm trying to get good quality things, or it's a bit like an art. You have to be very good at spotting when it goes up, and it can sometimes be a lot of work. So those are two things that might stop people from making a change.
Good, thank you. And as he's going, I'm hoping that you guys are also filling in for yourselves, right? So this box is, what are the obstacles that would actually really block the change from happening? And then finally, the fourth quadrant is about, what do we need to sacrifice for the change? It's a call for keeping things as they are. And one of the reasons why we want to keep things as they are is because I'd have to give up something that I really like. It may have nothing to do. The effects of giving that up have nothing to do with getting the problem solved, getting the benefits achieved. But in the course of making the change, I'd have to give up something. And I really don't want to do it because there would be really negative effects for me or those that I love and care about by doing that. And it's represented by the mermaid. And here's my take on the reason for this is, imagine now, right? Continuing with the analogy, you've got this pot of gold that has the potential to give you plenty of benefits and solve problems to get you away from the alligator. Maybe you figured out how to overcome the obstacles to get there, but you live near a body of water. Your best friend is the mermaid that lives in the body of water. Your best friend won't be able to travel with you to get the solution. And so you would have to sacrifice being with your best friend in order to get all the benefits of the solution, right? That doesn't feel good. That's a reason to really not want to do the change. It's not about I can't do it. It's I really don't want to because of this. So Fynn, walk us through what you wrote here.
So the first one, being seen as trendy or fashionable by your friends, unless you're in a very specific community that already understands the need for this, for quite a while at least, people would not be seen as trendy, would not be seen as fashionable, which currently with my age group is a really important thing. And this is something that I've usually would fall foul to before this, would be wanting to have the latest tech items. And that wouldn't work anymore because you'd be trying to get stuff that's secondhand or refurbished. Like here I have my phone's refurbished. And different things you'd want them to be refurbished or swapped or something like that. And a lot of people just enjoy shopping and the experience of going shopping with friends and getting new things, different things to try, like new clothes, new devices, and it would still be there in a sense, but it wouldn't be the same as going to a new shop or going to a shop and getting cool things. It would be different to what it was. Those are things that people would have to sacrifice for the change.
Well, we've made it through your change matrix. I'm so happy that you have been able to share, not just, for me, it's not just about what you shared about what you put in the change matrix. Through the time that I've known you, you've educated me a lot on this whole issue of how all the shopping that we do impacts climate change. I really was not aware of that. So the fact that we're now able to bring your message to a larger group really feels good to me too. Before I close the screen, while you're still looking at this, Fynn, I'd like to ask you three things, and take it however you want. How has this process helped you? And yeah, I'll stop there. How did using this process help you? Because this is a subject you've already been thinking about. When you decided to do it, what's different for you now with this tool in your hand?
Well, before I thought a lot of different random thoughts about this type of thing. I knew it had to happen, but I didn't know how it should happen, the way that I'd need to think differently. And never had I really thought about the things that I'd actually have to sacrifice. And like, I knew the things that could be solved, never in as much detail, and not things like cleaner air, happier people, until I'd looked into this. I hadn't known about the problems that companies face of unnecessary production. And I hadn't realized that a lot of people might not do it due to the crutches that we can see here. So yeah, that's why that's what I've learned from this process.
Thank you. And so what have you, with this particular one, what have you done with it so far, and how are you going to use your new insights going forward?
Well, what we've done with it so far is a lot of the points here. This is what actually I finished climate training from Young Scott. The stuff that, as you said, we designed. I finished it not long ago. I think just last week, maybe
2 weeks ago.
And right at the end, we had to do like a bit like an essay on a change now that we were going to do. And this is actually the change I'd chosen. And I used this quite a lot throughout that process of writing that piece of writing for that, to finish off a climate training. And going forward, I'm going to use it to try and educate more people about problems to do with the climate, and maybe not just this change matrix, but other ones for different problems.
Beautiful. Thank you. I'm gonna turn off the slide share now. I'm gonna open it up for questions and insights from you all. Fynn, amazing job. Amazing. Thank you so much. I really, it's just a pleasure to have you here, to have gotten to know you a bit through the last few months, and really thank you. So I want to invite all of you. I mean, we're all here together. We're not a huge group, so feel free to open up your cameras, raise your hands. We can take questions as you have them. Rach, you've been going through are there any questions that have been placed in the chat that we should address?
Yeah, Steve wanted to know which of the 4 boxes was your starting place for your analysis, and kind of why did you start there?
Well, I started with the pot of gold, and the reason I start with that is I can like see it in my head. So once I can see where this pot of gold is, I can see that there are where the different problems lie, and I use that as a starting point. So then I can kind of build my mountain with my different things that could cause harm and things that could stop people from wanting to do a change. And then once I'm at the bottom, I can start to understand the alligator, and then trying to see kind of just, if I can't find any, finding the opposite of the change, and just checking if these are pluses, because usually a lot of the time the change can be a bit of the opposite of the change can be a bit of an opposite of the actual like mermaid. So your pot of gold usually is the opposite or close to the opposite of the mermaid, if that answers your question.
Yeah, now I'm going to have to say something there. So beautiful, beautiful. Steve, I want to also bring in some past experience with this tool for you too. There are many people in the world, I'm one of them, who, if you ask me to start with the categorization, it takes me longer to get what I'm really thinking out there, because I don't know that we all think in the same order, right? And so my recommendation is usually just spit it out, make yourself a list. Start with what are the pros, what are the cons of making the change? Then move to categorization. Then you'll find out, where's my blind spot? What am I not thinking about? Because there's almost always all 4 of these areas involved in making a change. And that's been very helpful for me. I've tried to put some real specific questions in here and behind it. And one of the things I'll talk about before we conclude, or in your email if we run out of time, is the Change Matrix course that I'm offering for free that takes you 40 minutes to get through the videos if you don't even do the exercises along with it, that provides those kind of prompts, so that you can help yourself really dive into what are the different aspects of this change that I want to make sure I think about, so that I can verify the change is really worth it, and I could start thinking about how to solve for the broken leg and the mermaid. So if that helps, everybody that you ask will tell you a different order. That's why I say be careful about getting fixated on an order, because it may serve to block your thinking rather than help it. Any more questions from the chat, Rach?
Jack wanted to know, how did Fynn find out about this change matrix and working with you?
So I found out about really, I should probably go back to when I was first introduced to TOC.
You had Lisa's book on your bed for a while.
Yeah.
You can ask your dad to show his face. That's okay if he shows his face now. If you're feeling okay, Steve.
Yeah, my voice is still very croaky.
Yeah. But I originally learned about TOC when it was Rami and Alex doing some of a set of their lectures in lockdown.
Yeah.
And the Rami and Alex's he's referring to is Rami Goldratt, who's Ellie Goldratt's son and heads up a firm called Goldratt Group, and Alex Knight, who's one of the very, very early thinkers and experts and amazing people in theory of constraints, who heads up a company called QFI in the UK. Go ahead.
Yeah. So
rather than go to school, when it was in lockdown, rather than go to school, sometime Fynn would attend the same program that I was running with Rami. So that's how he first fell into it.
And then after that, we did some work with clouds, and it was in
Lisa's
and out
book.
of the Lisa's book, and part of Alex's book as well, and just in and out. And then I started doing more stuff with climate. So before it was like just something I thought about quite a bit, and then that started to change to be doing more stuff with climate. So then I learned about Lisa's tool. I think we learned about it in what was it?
I think January was when you reached out, wasn't it, Lisa, when you first said you was going to do your
with the change matrix, yeah. So, but we first met, I think, last October before the COP26, because you were asking me what I thought about using TOC to help climate change. And then one thing led to another, and all roads led to Fynn and helping him.
Yeah. We wanted to make a really big difference at COP26.
Yeah.
So.
And that kind of just started to, I then met Lisa and we worked together for me to learn about this change matrix. And I built change matrix. And
how long did it take? How long did the first one take when you first sketched one out?
The first change matrix?
Yeah.
Wasn't it like, well, we used to do it in the school mornings.
Yeah.
So it was like less than an hour if you added the 4 school mornings it took.
Yeah, so less than an hour to get to that first draft of the first change.
And then just refining it after that. until now when we had the opportunity to do this with all these different people.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Any more questions, insights, comments before I say a few final words?
Do you want to ask anything? Do you want to ask anything to the people? No?
Okay.
Well, hopefully
so-
you'll read through the chat then, because you have lots of compliments in the chat about how
Yeah.
great you just did. And I think you're going to change the world for sure.
Certainly have a good chance to, young man. Question from Dave Oakley is, have you shared it with your friends? And if so, did anyone use it?
I haven't shared this. Well, I've shared the change matrix and this type of thinking a couple times before with some of my friends, and we have used it before. Maybe not this. We've used the clouds, and I
We
think
use this with sustainability group.
we've used this. Yeah, I've used this actually with the sustainability club at school, and me and my friends have solved a couple problems before with clouds, and some bigger problems we've used things like change matrices. So yeah, I have quite a few times have real world solutions can be found through TOC and these types of thinking processes.
Wonderful. We have reached time, and so I want to wrap it up with huge thanks for Fynn. Fynn and I would love it if you would share however you answered your questions in the change matrix with us. So when you get your emails, I will give you an email address to send them back to me, and we want to compile. We want to learn from how you answered it, so he can be better equipped as he goes forth on his mission to help save our planet. Thank you all so much for joining us. I wish you a great rest of your day and rest of your week, and we'll see you soon.
Thank
Thanks
you,
very
Fynn.
much. Bye.
Bye.